Welcome to the deep dive. We are jumping right into things today with a question that might feel a little uncomfortable.
But entirely necessary, I think.
Oh, absolutely necessary. Have you ever caught yourself just going through the motions of your week and suddenly realized you feel like an extra in your own life?
Right, like you are living out a script that was actually written by someone else.
Exactly. And you're just reading the lines someone handed to you.
It's this profound feeling of detachment. And it's something so many people experience, often without really having the language to articulate it.
Yeah, which is exactly why we're here today. We are pulling our insights from a vibrant, highly unconventional source who tackles this exact sensation,
We are looking at a YouTube video by Cabrini Schneider.
who goes by Gangster Chef Cabrini, which I just love.
It's a great name. And the video is titled, Stop Sleepwalking in Your Life. And the mission we have today is to extract her specific framework for waking up and taking the reins back.
And I have to say, right off the bat, Cabrini is definitely not your standard self-help guide.
No, not at all.
The source material blends this raw, unfiltered life advice with some deeply resonant psychological and spiritual metaphors. She actually frames her videos as Spirit Sunday conversations.
Which she designs to feed your mind, body, and soul.
Right. What I appreciated immediately is that she doesn't approach this from a clinical, detached perspective. She brings this immense, lived-in energy.
She brings a lot of passion. But beneath that passion is a very structured way of looking at human behavior.
For sure.
Our goal here is to sift through her analogies and stories to distill these insights into practical takeaways for you. The material operates on a few different levels, blending spiritual concepts with what essentially amounts to cognitive restructuring.
We really want to bridge those worlds today, and I think you're going to find her perspective highly disruptive in the best way possible.
Highly disruptive.
A bit later, we are going to look at Cabrini's surprising, very positive redefinition of a famous four-letter word.
Which completely flips how we view our daily frustrations.
It really does. But to get to that paradigm shift, we first need to establish her baseline diagnosis. Cabrini argues that a vast majority of us are simply sleepwalking.
And we need to be clear about what she means by that term.
Right, because she isn't talking about physical exhaustion.
Or just being burned out at work. Her definition of sleepwalking is the act of inheriting things that do not belong to you and then living as if they do.
Specifically, she argues that we inherit our mother's fears, our father's doubts, and the overarching voice of society.
And we do this whether that societal voice is grounded in reality or is completely unrealistic.
You essentially absorb all this external baggage and make it your internal monologue. You walk around operating on software that somebody else installed, completely unaware of the programming.
That is a great way to look at it. The software analogy works perfectly.
Thanks.
Because if we zoom out and look at the environment we operate in, modern society is practically engineered to keep us in this sleepwalking state.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Cabrini specifically targets the social media trap here.
Yes. When you sit there endlessly scrolling through Instagram or TikTok, watching influencers or peers who present this curated image of having made it big.
You end up trapped in their dream.
Exactly. You start substituting their manufactured highlight reel for your own actual aspirations.
You lose the plot of your own life because you're busy spectating someone else's.
It's a huge disconnect.
Cabrini makes a strong point that a lot of what goes viral or captures our attention online isn't spiritually connecting to anyone's core.
It is just surface-level noise designed to keep you scrolling.
Right. If you want to actually be connected to your own life, you have to make a conscious decision to wake up from the collective dream society is feeding you.
Which is much easier said than done.
Oh, infinitely.
Breaking that programming requires understanding how our minds process the inputs we give it, which leads into what might be the most crucial metaphor Cabrini uses.
The concept of the seed and the soil.
Yes.
I want to spend some time on this because on the surface, it sounds like a very standard motivational trope. Cabrini says the seed represents your thought and the soil represents your subconscious mind. You plant a seed, a pumpkin seed, a watermelon seed into the soil. And here is her core observation.
The soil never argues with the seed.
It never argues.
It never does. The soil is entirely neutral.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
When she says the soil just accepts whatever you plant, my mind immediately jumps to the whole toxic positivity trend.
Ah, right.
Are we just supposed to ignore the weeds and pretend everything is a beautiful flower? Does she address the reality that some negative situations require our attention and can't just be positive thought away?
That is a very valid pushback.
Oh,
But if we look closer at her framework, it isn't about ignoring reality at all.
okay.
It's about understanding the mechanics of attention.
Yeah.
From a psychological standpoint, what Cabrini is describing aligns closely with neuroplasticity and confirmation bias.
Interesting. So how does that work in this context?
Well, the subconscious mind, the soil, doesn't filter your thoughts for what is objectively beneficial or harmful. It simply takes the input you provide most often and cultivates a worldview around it.
So if you constantly dwell on negative thoughts,
Your brain literally wires itself to become more efficient at spotting negativity. Your subconscious goes out and looks for evidence to prove your negative thoughts right.
wow. So it's not about pretending bad things don't happen. It's about recognizing that whatever you obsess over is what you are training your brain to produce more of.
Precisely. And Cabrini gives a highly relatable example to illustrate this. She asks us to imagine a coworker or an acquaintance. Let's call her Sharon.
Okay, Sherry.
You spend your afternoon complaining to a friend. Let me tell you about Sharon. She drives me crazy. She did this. She said that.
We've all been there.
Right. And Cabrini stops and asks, when you are spitting out that venom, is that really Sharon or is that you?
It forces a massive shift in perspective.
It really does. Because Sharon is likely miles away,
Completely unaffected by your conversation.
just living her life.
Mhm.
But by choosing to complain and obsess over her actions, you are the one generating and experiencing that negative physiological and emotional response.
You are the one watering that negative seed in your own subconscious soil.
Exactly. You are volunteering to connect yourself to that stress.
So, thinking about your own daily routines right now,
Hmm.
what kind of seeds are you habitually watering?
That's the million-dollar question.
Are you watering thoughts that build toward your goals and your peace of mind, or are you spending your mental energy watering your frustrations with Sharon?
And if we realize we are constantly watering weeds, the
Yeah.
natural next step is figuring out how to disrupt that pattern. How do we actually rethink our reality and stop the sleepwalking?
This brings us to that four-letter word I mentioned earlier.
Yes, let's get into this.
Cabrini introduces what she calls a neologism, taking an existing word and injecting it with a completely new meaning.
Right.
She takes the word FUCK and turns it into an acronym. It stands for Finally Understanding Common Knowledge.
Finally, understanding common knowledge. It is a very deliberate linguistic disruption.
It really wakes you up.
Cabrini shares the origin story of this, noting that she and her partner developed this concept around late 2012, early 2013.
And she specifically wanted a word that naturally evokes intense emotion, right?
Yes. She notes it's arguably the only word in the English language that can traverse the entire spectrum of human emotion.
From extreme anger to extreme joy.
Exactly. But she wanted to capture that raw power and redirect it into something empowering.
She mentions that the desire to deliver this specific message to her audience was so intense that the acronym just poured out of her partner in a moment of pure inspiration.
And the core meaning of finally understanding common knowledge is the realization that life is going to happen. Hardships, setbacks, frustrations.
Yeah.
That is the common knowledge.
I all know that. That's a given.
Right. The finally understanding part is waking up to the fact that you have total agency over your response.
You don't have to inherit the negativity of a situation.
It is entirely about reclaiming your agency. And she applies this directly to her own professional life in a way that I think will resonate strongly with anyone who has ever taken a professional risk.
She wrote a book about this too, didn't she?
She did. It's titled, Fuck That, What Do You Want? An Entrepreneur's Journey to Self-Discovery.
Right.
In discussing her background, she drops a major reframe regarding business failure. She has opened multiple businesses over the years, and she adamantly refuses to categorize any of them as failures.
Instead, she calls them failed successes.
Failed successes.
I really had to sit with that phrase for a minute.
It's powerful.
The logic she presents is that if you manage to take an idea, execute it, and successfully open a business, that initial act is a success.
Yes.
If the business eventually closed or didn't work out long term, it becomes a failed success. But nobody can take away the initial triumph of getting it off the ground.
And if we connect this back to concepts common in business strategy, like the Silicon Valley ethos of failing fast or iterative learning, Cabrini is touching on the exact same principle, just through a spiritual lens.
Calling an endeavor a failed success actively changes the subconscious soil we were just talking about.
Think about the psychological difference. If you label a closed business a total failure, you plant a seed of incompetence.
You train your brain to fear risk.
Exactly. But if you label it a failed success, you acknowledge the outcome while planting a seed of resilience.
You are telling your subconscious, I am capable of executing big ideas, even if the variables don't always align.
It fundamentally changes your relationship with risk.
So we have the diagnosis of sleepwalking, and we have this framework for reframing our reality, but how does Cabrini suggest we actually implement this day to day?
She provides a very specific, practical toolkit, and it starts with what she calls a Spirit Sunday notebook.
The journaling practice she outlines comes with some very firm ground rules.
I'm very firm.
The first rule being, do not use a cheap dollar store notebook. She is emphatic about this.
Absolutely emphatic.
You need to spend the $10 or whatever it costs to buy a beautiful journal that genuinely makes you feel good when you hold it.
There is real psychological weight to that instruction.
How so?
By investing in an object of quality, you are signaling to yourself that the exercise you are about to do matters. It is a physical manifestation of valuing your own thoughts.
You are creating a dedicated, respected space for your aspirations rather than just scribbling them on the back of a receipt.
Exactly. And once you have that journal, the directive is to write down what you want to see happen in your life with zero editing.
No judgment, no filtering for what seems realistic.
She uses her own journal as an example, noting that she wrote down her desires to travel the world, eat incredible food, meet amazing people, and teach others how to fall in love with themselves in their own kitchens.
She refers to her audience as manifestors, pointing out that you are constantly manifesting your reality, whether you intend to or not.
Because the subconscious soil is always growing something.
Right. The only way to ensure it grows what you actually want is to define it clearly, without the inherited doubts of society acting as a filter.
And to help define those desires, Cabrini gives us 3 foundational questions that must be answered in that journal.
1, who are you? 2, what do you want? And 3, why?
I want to pause on those 3 questions.
Let's do it.
Because while they sound incredibly simple, they are notoriously difficult for adults to answer honestly.
Oh, absolutely. If someone asks you what you want, the immediate instinct is to list what you think you should want.
Or what is practical for your family.
Or your career.
Precisely. We are conditioned over decades to filter our desires through the lens of obligation.
Answering what do you want without editing requires stripping away all those inherited societal scripts we discussed earlier.
And her answer to the why question is equally revealing.
Her answer to why is just so refreshing. She says you do it because finding your somebodyness feels good.
Somebodyness. I love that.
It feels inherently good to uncover who you are at your core, independent of anyone else's expectations.
Once you wrestle with those 3 questions, the source material moves into the operational phase. Cabrini outlines 5 anchoring principles to help you navigate your daily life without slipping back into a sleepwalking state.
Principle number 1, make a decision. She states that every single shift in your life has to begin with a firm decision.
The emphasis here is on the finality of deciding. A lot of anxiety in sleepwalking comes from decision fatigue or the fear of closing off other options.
We float in the middle ground, hoping circumstances will decide for us.
Making a decision is the catalyst that forces the subconscious mind to start aligning your actions with a specific outcome.
Which leads right into principle number 2, trust your decision. This is where she introduces the concept of living on a trusted universe account.
And she clarifies immediately that she doesn't mean a financial trust fund from her parents.
Right, she means a spiritual trust account. She notes she has lived this way in Los Angeles for 38 years.
Let's unpack the mechanics of this trusted universe account. She is essentially describing the shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset.
Okay, so when you operate from scarcity,
Every decision is rooted in fear. Fear of running out of time, money, or opportunities.
right,
Living on a trusted universe account means your baseline operating system assumes that you are capable of handling whatever outcomes arise.
it is a state of profound self-trust, where you believe your decisions will ultimately serve your growth, even if the path gets complicated.
It's trusting your own resilience.
Okay, principle number 3, be focused. She comes back to the idea of the attention economy here.
Yes.
You have to stay focused on the decision you made, which means you have to pause the swiping.
You have to stop looking at everyone else's highlight reels and actually pay attention to your own internal landscape.
Because if your attention is constantly fractured by external inputs, you cannot maintain the internal clarity required to execute your decisions.
Focus is the currency you use to fund that trusted universe account.
Principle number 4, take inspired action.
I find her phrasing here highly intentional. She doesn't just say, take action.
Because frantic, uninspired action is often just another symptom of sleepwalking.
Exactly. We hustle and grind because society tells us to, without considering if the action serves our actual goals.
She advises getting still enough to listen to what she calls your first mind, or the God voice.
It's that initial, deep-seated instinct you feel before the overthinking and the inherited doubts kick in.
How many times have you looked back at a situation and thought, I should have just followed my first mind?
We ignore it because it often suggests a path that feels risky or goes against the grain.
But Cabrini argues that instinct is the most authentic guide you have.
It bypasses the analytical brain that is so desperate to keep you safe and comfortable and taps directly into your core desires.
Which brings us to the fifth and final principle, enjoy the journey.
She phrases the reasoning behind this so beautifully. You must enjoy the journey because the journey always leads back to you.
It is the ultimate destination.
Think about it. When you travel across the world for a vacation, eventually you pack your bags and come back home.
Every external goal you pursue, every business you start, every relationship you build, ultimately serves as a mirror reflecting back who you are.
The journey isn't about escaping yourself. It's about returning to yourself with more clarity.
This flows perfectly into the final major theme of Cabrini's message, which is about how you present that authentic self to the world. She talks about owning your light and being the vibe.
She shares an anecdote about a friend telling her, "You always create a vibe."
And while she didn't fully realize it at first, she eventually decided to just own it. She says, I am a vibe.
What makes this section of the source material so compelling is her vulnerability regarding how she used to manage that energy.
She confesses that for a long time, she would actively dim her own light.
She tells this story about going to people's birthday parties and consciously shrinking her personality because she didn't want to outshine the birthday person.
She was hyper-aware of not making other people uncomfortable with her natural exuberance.
This is a phenomenon we see frequently, particularly among individuals who are naturally empathetic or highly charismatic.
There is a tendency to self-censor.
You shrink your presence so that others can feel larger. But Cabrini offers a very necessary corrective to this mindset.
She clarifies the balance. She isn't saying you should walk into a room and be aggressively loud or obnoxious just to take up space.
Right. But she points out that if a room is dark and you walk in and naturally bring light, that is a gift to the room.
By dimming your light to accommodate someone else's insecurity, you are actually doing a disservice to everyone present.
You cannot elevate the people around you by pretending to be smaller than you are.
Walk into the room and own the energy you bring.
It all circles back to the realization that taking care of your own spiritual and mental state is the prerequisite for everything else.
Cabrini closes out her video with a spoken word piece that uses the classic oxygen mask metaphor to hammer this point home.
It is a striking piece of writing. The core message revolves around breaking the code of survival mode.
She says, I've been holding my breath waiting for signs, living for others, ignoring my mind. My heart deserves more than survival mode. I'm putting on my oxygen mask. I'm breaking the code.
It perfectly encapsulates the transition from sleepwalking to waking up. Survival mode is waiting for external validation. Waking up requires prioritizing your own oxygen.
As the poem concludes, if I don't choose me, I'll disappear. 'Cause baby, if I don't, who else can?
If you don't choose you, who else can? It's a question that demands accountability.
So let's take a step back and look at the whole picture we've painted today. We started by diagnosing the issue, realizing that much of our stress comes from sleepwalking.
Living out inherited fears and getting lost in the comparison trap of social media.
We examined the mechanics of our attention, learning that our subconscious soil never argues with the seed we plant.
Understanding neuroplasticity means we have to stop volunteering to water negative thoughts.
We looked at Cabrini's law, utilizing that powerful acronym to finally understand common knowledge.
And we explored how reframing failures as failed successes actively rewires our relationship with risk.
We outlined the practical toolkit, securing a journal that signals your own value, writing down unedited desires, and leaning on the 5 principles.
Especially the shift toward living on a trusted universe account.
And finally, we explored the necessity of refusing to dim your light and choosing to put your own oxygen mask on first.
Which brings us to the ultimate question Cabrini asks in the source material. It is a question I want you, listening right now, to apply to your own life.
Let's hear it.
If the journey of life always leads back to you, if you inevitably have to come back to yourself at the end of the day, Are you the person that you want to come back to?
Are you the person you want to come back to? That requires some real, unedited honesty to answer.
It does. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you go about your week. We discussed the seed and the soil at length today.
Yes, the soil never argues.
Exactly. If it is functionally true that our subconscious soil never argues with the seed we plant, that it simply goes to work finding evidence to grow whatever thought we provide, what would happen if you intentionally planted the seed of a goal that you currently believe is utterly impossible?
Oh, I like that.
What if the soil doesn't know the difference between a realistic expectation and an absolute fantasy? What kind of reality could you begin to grow if you completely suspended your own disbelief for just 1 week?
Plant the impossible seed and see what the soil does with it. That is a brilliant challenge to leave on. Thank you so much for exploring this with us. Stay curious, take a hard look at the script you're living, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.